Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We know it's right at 11:30. There may be some people still logging in, but we know time is of the essence, and we want to make sure that we get through the material and allow time for questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, welcome and thanks for joining us today. My name is Susie Krause. I am an employee here at Lutz & Company, and we welcome the opportunity to continue this educational series that we have related to women's financial literacy. Today's topic is financial management and privacy best practices. I want to give the opportunity to share that the main things covered in today's topics will be the financial basics, some privacy and information safety tips, and technology considerations, all very important topics as we give thought to them today. I'm going to turn it over and let the presenters actually each introduce themselves. So Lauren, if you'd like to go first, that would be great.
Sure. I'm Lauren Harris. I am a manager in our client advisory services department here at Lutz. I've been with Lutz for 7 years and have had the pleasure of working on a lot of outsourced accounting clients and some of our family office administration type work, which will tie in nicely to kind of what we cover today.
I'm Erin Boss. I'm a director in our client advisory services department. I've been with the firm for 20 years, and I specialize in our outsourced accounting with a focus in medical and then also the high net worth and family office administration as well.
And I'm Kayla Kurtenbach. I'm an account manager with our Lutz Tech team. I'm in my first year with Lutz Technology, and I focus on technology consulting and managed services.
Very good. Well, thank you. We look forward to hearing all the great information to share. Today is the third presentation in our series, and just to share a little bit about the whys. You know, we believe it's extremely important for financial literacy purposes to understand, to have a general education and awareness of those topics. We encourage family members to, continuously as well as effectively, and what we mean by effectively is, not only attend, but participate in the financial planning and estate planning discussions so that you are well aware, so that you have confidence to make those types of decisions or have comfort in some decisions that have been made when those, what I call life change events, do occur or happen suddenly. There have been two other series presented prior to this series. The first one was the financial access checklist, and that series was really sharing important information so that you know the contacts, your professional advisors that have been involved historically, as well as maintaining a list of the documents and where those documents are located. The second series was actually a letter to my surviving spouse or family member. And the importance of that is really having those discussions and understanding that financial information and estate information. Both of those seminars are actually on our Lutz website. So if you weren't able to attend or want to revisit any of those, please feel free to go to our website and take a look at those. I'm going to now turn it over to Lauren and Erin as they start on the first part of our presentation.
As Susie mentioned, one of the topics today is financial management. And we think that one of the first steps in financial management is to really hone in and get a good understanding of your entire financial picture. And to start that, you need a good understanding of your cash inflows, what's coming in as income, and then what's coming in or going out as outflows and expenses. And when we look at that, typically the revenue, is easy to identify. If you're a W-2 employee, you have a paycheck coming in regularly. If you're a 1099, you have checks coming in. If maybe you're an owner in a business and you have some distributions or partner draws coming in on a monthly basis. Then there are also things too. Do you have investments? Are you earning cash from investments? Do you have other revenue sources? Maybe you have rental properties and you're receiving rent. So it's just to get a good idea of what all is coming in on a monthly basis. I always ask too, if there was something missing or you didn't receive something, would you even know about it? And if the answer is no, it's probably a good idea to start keeping track of that so you really have a good idea. A little bit harder to quantify and to understand is expenses. We have, reoccurring expenses. there's non-reoccurring expenses, just things like that. So we're going to kind of concentrate this presentation more on the cash outflows and how to quantify and keep track of those. One of the items that we did talk about in one of the first series is keeping a good listing of your access to online accounts. So, information of online account usernames, passwords, how often does that stuff change? Kayla will talk a little bit later on in the presentation about, it's maybe not safe to keep all that stuff somewhere, but there are apps that you can use to store that stuff online safely so that you have access to that. I know personally, anytime there's an opportunity, whether it's a doctor's office that has a portal, I'm trying to do as many things online and pay online as possible. So I'm keeping track of a list of that stuff, and you create a password, and at that time you think, oh, I'm going to remember this password, but how many times do we all go to that forget password and have to create a new password? So just making sure we're updating that list constantly as well, so that we have access and can get into that stuff when we need it. Another item that we talked about in the second series is creating that listing of that assets and liabilities. A lot of times the physical assets are easy to identify, with cars, boats, other houses that you may have, jewelry, you have coins, that kind of stuff. Some of the other items, investments, college savings plans, retirement plans, some of that stuff that you might not think of as assets, just making sure that we're keeping a good track of those. And then as well as, the liabilities that go with those. Are there mortgages? Are there notes? Things like that. And that we're updating that stuff annually. And that in conjunction with the cash ins and outs and then the assets and liabilities really enables you to get that good overall picture of your financial health. So it's all great. You're probably thinking that's a great idea, but how do I do that? So some strategies we have for keeping track of bills and spend tracking, as well as revenue and assets and liabilities. The most common we probably see is QuickBooks from a business standpoint and as well as personal. And Lauren will talk a little bit more about that later. But that, QuickBooks is a software that allows you to keep track of spending, revenue, as well as assets and liabilities if you want to, get that detailed. But if you maybe don't want to get that far, you can keep track of it in Excel as well. There's different budgeting apps. Some of them are free that you could use. Mint.com is another example of one that we see that allows you to keep track of everything, credit cards, cash investments, kind of all in one place on one app. So there are different, apps and tools that can be used to keep track of this and really, make it easy for you once it's set up. So as I mentioned, we're going to concentrate on bills and how to keep track of those and ways to quantify those. So we have, our reoccurring bills that we have, you want to get a list of those. And some of those are, car taxes are examples, insurance, real estate taxes, car payments, utilities. Do you have memberships, different memberships, and when do those renew? Are they auto renewal? A lot of times things, we've all heard stories and probably had that happen where something maybe just auto renews and the price went up quite a bit from the month before. And, if you're not keeping track of that stuff or don't know that, that's something you definitely need to watch. Again, we just want to make sure that we know and have access to the credit cards and bank accounts. And then, procedures for the bill pay. How do things get paid? Are they auto pay? Do you receive an invoice? Do you receive an email that says, I need to log into the portal to pay? Is it auto withdrawn from your bank account? Do you pay with a credit card? And, if it's credit card, I'm sure, most of us have multiple credit cards. So which credit card is it linked to? And I have a story on that. I started keeping track of that probably about 3 years ago. Listing of all of my online accounts and which credit card that they were, I've username, passwords, and then which credit cards or how they're paid. I happened to lose my credit card on vacation about a year ago, which is already stressful enough if that's ever happened to you. But I was able to pull up that sheet and I knew right away, and it probably cut the time in half of the vendors I needed to contact or the vendors I needed to update with that new credit card. So it just made that process so much easier, once I had that updated card to do that. And then we also want to make sure too that you're including your significant other, your partner in this particularly often. So whether that's once a quarter, maybe sitting with them, to go through things that have changed from last time, new things, or maybe even sitting down and doing it, by yourself. Because usually, in each relationship, there's kind of maybe one person that handles that. So we really think it's important to sit down and go through that so that if anything were to happen, or, you needed to do it for some reason, you weren't lost and could log in and had just a good record of all of that stuff that needs to be done, monthly.
Right. There you go. Okay, so I'm gonna cover some more detail here. I know what Erin went through, that can be a lot, especially if this is something that you're not currently doing or you're looking to get started. It's definitely can be an overwhelming process. And what I tell my clients sometimes is there's probably never a time to do this too early, but there can be a time to do it too late. And so getting a head start on it can really be beneficial. So we wanted to make sure we covered some strategies for how to make this process a little easier. And one of the things that we use on our outsourced accounting clients, businesses, and family office clients is a software called Bill.com. And the nice thing about Bill.com is it can really help you organize in one spot everything that Erin was just talking about. So, gaining an understanding and creating a list is probably the first step. And then adding a software like Bill.com can really help you organize and track all of that on a recurring basis. So Bill.com is an online website that facilitates expense management and is a way where you can pay all of your bills and track all of your bills in one spot. The nice part about it is it's online. It can be accessed anywhere. So if you're traveling or if you're traveling a lot, you can always access it with a computer, an iPad. And it's accessible, and you can, once you have created kind of a list of the vendors or the bills that you need, you can get all of that set up in Bill.com, and it helps manage it on a recurring basis. So when Erin talks about, recurring bills, your car taxes, your insurance payments, real estate taxes, you can get recurring transactions set up in Bill.com to serve as kind of a reminder for those things that are happening maybe annually or quarterly or monthly even. And, if you set up a recurring transaction for your utility bills to be monthly, you can set up that transaction in Bill.com, and every month it'll just kind of remind you that needs to be paid. So there's lots of different ways that you can get information into Bill.com. And the nice part is it can be 100% electronic or paper free if you want. So you can email things into there, scan them to a computer and upload them. Or you can,
Vendors can directly upload to Bill.com as well.
vendors can send things automatically there if you wanted to direct them to that route as well.
Lauren, I know that Erin, you shared, I apologize, I'm chiming in from the outside, but you'd shared about, keeping your spouse or family member, significant other. Is there an opportunity in Bill.com to maybe have some of that opportunity to share?
Yes. Yep, you can set up multiple users in Bill.com. And so, if you and your spouse both wanted access or you wanted to share duties at all, you can have multiple users in there. And it would, it's really good for both of you to kind of have an understanding of the process and maybe get in there on a regular basis or even take turns doing it. It's kind of like a cross-training type of thing too. So that's a really good point.
We do have one question about the charge for Bill.com, high level.
It is a monthly fee for access to the software. And then I believe there's a per user fee as well and a per transaction fee, depending on how you're paying the bills. So you can pay via ACH, credit card, or check in there. And so depending on how you're paying, there's different fees for those types of transactions. The nice part is, I think I kind of said it can be 100% electronic. So if you wanted to pay a vendor by check, or a vendor prefers to get paid by a check in there, you don't have to keep paper check stock. You just kind of set up your bank account in Bill.com, and they handle printing and sending out checks, mailing the checks out to the vendor on the back end. So all you have to do is log into Bill.com and kind of process your payments from that perspective. So if you're traveling, makes it really easy to kind of continue this process and make it seamless.
In addition, for security, and I know Kayla may talk about this, but in Bill.com's world, they use their own checking account. So in addition to that, if you pay something with check, we are now also creating some protection. You want to
Yeah.
speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So if you process a batch of payments in Bill.com, Bill.com pulls all of the funds out of your bank account. So really only Bill.com has access to your routing and account number. They pull all of the funds into a clearing account that they will then utilize to, cut checks or send ACH payments out. So as checks get mailed to your vendor from Bill.com, it isn't, the check doesn't contain your personal routing and account number. It contains Bill.com's information. So that is another added layer of security as well, which is really good.
Well, the reporting that's available too for spend tracking and budgeting and keeping track of things.
Yeah. Yep. So another benefit of Bill.com is it has seamless integration to softwares like QuickBooks or Sage. So a lot of times we are connecting Bill.com to a QuickBooks Online file, which Aaron kind of touched on. So you're processing all of your expenses or your vendor payments in Bill.com, and that's now connected to a QuickBooks Online file where you can do a lot more than just manage your expenses. So everything Aaron kind of talked about, as far as creating an asset listing, tracking your bank account activity to manage, cash inflows and maybe other cash outflows that aren't going through Bill.com if you have recurring charges set up. Those types of things are really easy to automate in QuickBooks Online. You can link your bank accounts and your credit card accounts into QuickBooks Online, and the transactions feed in, and you kind of just have to tell QuickBooks Online how to categorize those. So you'll set up a list of categories, expense categories or income categories. And a lot of times we're doing this monthly, we'll go in and just kind of categorize all of those transactions that have fed in automatically to QuickBooks Online. And it helps kind of start this process of, understanding your financial picture and organizing it in a manner that's easy to, QuickBooks Online makes it easy to do, and it's something that you can look at on a recurring basis to kind of get really comfortable with what you have going on. And to Aaron's point, if there's recurring inflows or outflows, and you're supposed to be receiving a check monthly, and you don't get it one month, how would you know? Something like Bill.com, you can easily look at a month-to-month statement and kind of pick out if there's increases or decreases that you're not expecting. So it really helps manage spend tracking and spend analysis. And also if you wanted to get more detailed and look at your assets and liabilities, and QuickBooks Online has the ability to track that information as well. And you can update those values in there and kind of start to create a report of your assets and liabilities if that was of interest to you.
And I know Lauren too, a lot of times when people are meeting with their financial advisors and looking at retirement and, needing to know what their monthly need is on a monthly basis to kind of maintain their lifestyle or live, having this history of expenses and revenue and net, kind of determining what their net need is each month, having this historical data and keeping track of this makes that process so much easier too.
We do, if this is something that's piqued your interest, we do offer trainings on, Bill.com and QBO. If you wanted more information, feel free to reach out. And we utilize both of these softwares in our outsourced accounting offering, so we have a lot of familiarity there.
And we do, we talk a lot, obviously this makes a lot of sense for businesses, but we do have a lot of personal, people that use it on a personal level too. So it does relate to both business and personal.
So the third kind of bullet point under financial management that we wanted to make sure we covered is investment tracking. So you have your normal recurring cash inflows, cash outflows. You can kind of gain an understanding of that. A lot of times, you know, if you have investment accounts, those are another asset that maybe are a little bit, it's kind of can be harder to track or keep on top of. So we wanted to provide some strategies for how you can better track that and stay involved. I think the biggest thing is to just make sure you're getting involved if you have investment accounts with your advisors that are holding some of your assets. Make sure you're staying involved, know who your representatives are, know who your team is at, you know, whatever firm that you're using for your investments. I think attending meetings or scheduling meetings either annually or semi-annually, quarterly, maybe even, to kind of go through a strategy and discuss, you know, what you have going on in your accounts is good. And we would always say to make sure both spouses or both parties are attending those meetings, even if maybe it's not as interesting to one person as the other. I know my husband would definitely not have an interest in going to those types of meetings, but it's important that, you know, you both kind of stay involved and have an understanding. Make sure you're receiving the quarterly statements and you understand what's included in there. And your advisors can help you understand that. You know, we help our clients with that as well. Just make sure you're getting those recurring quarterly statements and taking a look at them and posing questions as you see fit. And then it's also good to just periodically evaluate investment strategies. As you go through different stages of life, those strategies can change and can really have an impact on what, you know, you have going on. So I think we wanted to provide some tips there. All right, we will have a polling question now. So if you're looking for CPE credit for this presentation, go ahead and answer that polling question, yes, and we'll make sure you get that.
So Lauren and Erin have given a lot of great information on managing your finances and managing your bills. And so the other side to that perspective is now privacy and protection. How do you protect your presence, you know, to as well protect your financial situation? And so, of course, presence starts with protecting your physical security. You want to be mindful of, you know, your interactions and your security settings as it pertains to your home and, you know, where you're maintaining your assets. So one piece of that is definitely considering your vetting your vendors or vendor analysis. And what that really means is, you know, there are many ways to receive a referral. You can go on Nextdoor and see that someone's recommended, you know, someone that helped fix their garage, or you can go on Yelp and, you know, find a highly rated plumber. So really just considering as you're looking for vendors who are going to be coming in and out of your life, are they well vetted? Are they from a resource or a person that you would trust to, you know, allow access to that part of your life? Also making sure that you're asking questions about insurance. So are these, depending on the nature of the vendor, is that person insured? are they going to need or utilize access to any personal information of yours? In which case, making sure that they also have best practices. It's never a bad idea to ask that extra question that you may have in your mind, that you just want to make sure that you understand how they're utilizing your information, how they're entering your property. All good questions to ask to make sure that you are fully understanding, where you got that referral and how they'll be, managing within the scope of what they'll be providing. So with that, you'll also want to consider garage entry codes and home access. So, in addition to vendors, you may have family members, babysitters who will be coming in and out of your home. And there are a lot of different ways to manage that entry. So, I know the standard for a long time was just your standard garage door opener with, a 4-digit code. And certainly that's still quite popular. But you'll want to be sensitive as to how you're setting that code. So definitely don't want to be using 9999 or anything that would be readily tied to you in some way. I know that I had an acquaintance of mine who had theirs set to the 4 digits of their address. And unfortunately, that was very easily breachable. So just choosing something that's perhaps easy to remember to you, but not easily tied to you in some way. It's also worth considering that there are a number of systems out there that allow you to manage access to your home. So you can consider options for setting time restricted access. So there are a lot of systems out there that will either put a temporary code in place for vendors to use if they need to be in and out of your home while you're not there. Also setting specific times that your home can be accessed. There's a number of systems that allow you to utilize those types of functions. So definitely encourage, if that is available to you, that you're looking to utilize those security settings and just making that extra safer step in securing your access to your property.
And I know, Kayla, too, I have, an app where it tells me every time one of my garage doors is opened, or if I'm having a vendor or a cleaning lady come in, I can, open it from my phone for her, so I don't need to give her a code. But then when she leaves, I know that she's left too from the notification. So.
Exactly. And so that's actually, it segues right into that last point there, is in terms of cameras. I know a lot of people utilize Ring doorbells now. Just finding an internal or external or both camera system that might work for you, one that provides notifications. You hope you never have to use it, but in the event that you do, a lot of those types of systems will allow you not only real-time notifications, but also the ability to go back and look at video footage if for some reason you would need to look back, or if you felt that your home was compromised.
Or sometimes it's just a deterrent. If,
exactly.
Somebody sees the camera or sees that, they're gonna keep moving along.
Exactly. And so, you don't have to necessarily go with something as extensive as a Ring doorbell system. I know there are a lot of different types of simpler camera sets. And like you said, sometimes just having the camera out there, they don't necessarily know the extent of the system that you have, but seeing that they're on video can be an automatic deterrent. So.
I think too, it's also helpful to do a periodic review of what you currently have. Maybe you have, a camera system, but it hasn't been updated in 5 or 10 years. And there's a lot of new technology that can come out. So just maybe having a review of what you currently have. Maybe it's updating your garage door opener so you can have the app on your phone, or updating your camera system. So it's maybe using some new technology. That's never a bad idea too.
Absolutely. Technology changes quicker than we can recognize that it does. So it's like you said, it's always great to be reviewing and making sure that you're seeing what options might be available. So talking a little bit about your online security, in today's day and age, it is really important to consider, what does your online presence look like, and what might you be sharing that may be offering information to people that you don't necessarily want or need to share. So social media exposure is a really big one right now. Of course, with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, there are many ways in which people are sharing information about their lives. And it's definitely just something to consider in terms of the extent of the information that you're providing. So, for example, I know that it's really popular to tag yourself at a location where you might be having dinner, you're having a great dinner, you want to share pictures and let people know where you are. But that can inadvertently let, someone who might be monitoring know, oh, you're not in the house. Or for instance, if you post that you are going to a yoga class, it just gives people information about your habits, also different places that they could gain information about you. And so just being mindful of, the information that you put out there, especially as it pertains to your physical presence or anything that might give information away about your general habits. You just want to be mindful of your who, what, when, where, and why, retaining the important pieces to yourself. So for email and internet access, I think it's best practice. You just want to be careful that you're not sending anything that could be, that you wouldn't want, a stranger on the street to know. So I know at least in a lot of scenarios, you might be emailing back and forth with a husband or your parents, name information. I know my husband always has to call me and say, I don't remember what your social security number is. But now he knows better than to ask me to send it via email. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, there are many ways for online hackers to gain access to your email. And so just taking that extra precaution, if it is personal information, to pick up the phone and call whomever it is that you need to be providing it to if possible. You'll also want to make sure that your internet is enabled with a password. Typically, if you purchase a firewall for your home, it will come pre-configured with a password. You don't really have to do anything. You just have to enable it. And that extra step alone is going to cut out a large percentage of people who are looking for the easy hack, if you will, someone who will log on to your public internet and find a way to get access to your information. Just having a password in place is going to mitigate a lot of that initial potential for a compromise.
And would you say too, like if you're connecting to other internet, like making sure you're connecting to one that's password protected too?
Absolutely,
is important.
Yes, definitely. I know it can be really tempting to walk into Target and connect to Target's Wi-Fi. But in some ways, again, if it's not password protected, it is public. Anyone could be setting it up. And it's also something to keep an eye on that for a while, it was popular for the bad guys to set up what looked like legitimate internet connections. So they may, Target might be called Target Wi-Fi, and maybe you see another option in your phone that says Target Wi-Fi 11. And that's not necessarily a legitimate Wi-Fi connection. They're setting it up so that they will engage with those who might be looking for a way to connect to the internet. You inadvertently click it. So also just making sure that, you're being mindful of, those types of draws that the bad guys are looking for to get you to connect so they can get your information.
What about too? I know a lot of people don't have passwords on their phones.
Yes, definitely. Yes, 100%. If you are able to set up at a minimum, you'll want to have a password, but definitely I know most smartphones now set up, they'll have a fingerprint scanner, face scanner. Those are really great and easy ways to set up an additional security step. You just think, I know that in my younger years, I was guilty of losing a phone, and that was kind of pre the technology that exists today where you would have a face scanner. And so it's that added step that if you do happen to get in a situation where you've lost your phone, or if someone has taken it from somewhere that you've been, they won't be, those are the types of technologies, yeah, that will be much harder for them to bypass. So when you are setting up those passwords, whether for your email or any accounts that you have, you'll want to make sure that you're using, a unique password. Right now, we're kind of transitioning to using passphrases. So what that means is instead of putting your password as one word, number, exclamation point, you're going to want to try and hit that 12 characters because that's the point right now in which it really becomes unsustainable for hackers to continue to try and access your account. So for example, if you have a 12-character password that says, I eat bacon on Tuesdays, one exclamation point with a capital and a lowercase, you've gotten over that 12, you have an uppercase and a lowercase and a special character. It at a minimum would take a hacker 200 years to access that account. So, and I know it's hard to remember those passwords that are that long. And so definitely having a passphrase helps. And then I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but we do have experience with password managers as well. So there are a couple of different options that you could look at that help you to safely and securely manage the passwords that you have for your various accounts. So I know personally, we have used LastPass. There's also 1Password is quite popular. And those are the really nice thing about those password managers is that they also include an app for your phone. So whether you're on your computer or you're trying to access your accounts on your phone, that password manager will manage those passwords for you, and they keep them safe. So they're not saving into, for instance, your Google Chrome or your Microsoft Edge are actually in this manager. And so again, just makes it safe and alleviates some of the responsibility for you to have to remember 10, 15, 20 unique passwords. So the next point that we want to take a look at as well as cyber insurance, so just checking if your current insurance broker, if you have cyber insurance, and if you don't, working with your insurance broker to see if your situation is such that it would be advantageous for you to have that included. I know for businesses, it's really becoming more of a requirement to have cyber insurance. We anticipate that the trend may be that personal insurance as well may start to trend in that direction, just given the exposure that people have online. And so seeing if that's something that you would want to add to your insurance deck is definitely worth the investigation to see what options that you have. And then as well, the big item, educating your children on safety measures. So whether you grew up with the internet or it became popular within your adult life, best practices are always taught to and need to be learned. And so making sure that you continue to educate your children on what are you doing, what safety measures should they have in place. I know it is easy to consider that the younger generation grew up with technology, and so you may anticipate that they would know what to do, but their additional exposure to the internet and different technologies can actually make them in some ways more susceptible because it becomes second nature to them. And so just reconfirming and reiterating these safety practices with your children will help them carry that into their adulthood.
And I have a story on that. We were at church a couple weeks ago, and in the parking lot was the flash drive. My kids knew not to do that, but they're like, some people might think that's okay. It's a church parking lot. It should be safe, right? But not that saying it probably was safe, but you never know. So I think just educating them and making sure that they know of those risks that are out there.
Absolutely. And, just considering as your children are growing up, there are a number of different resources that you can use for restricted access as well on programs and internet. So just making sure, Windows 10, Mac both have inherent parental control settings that you can enable on your computer. So it's nothing additional. It comes with every standard computer that you have. And if you wanted to take that extra step, there are programs out there that you can consider that would help you manage and monitor that activity, just to make sure that you know, the activity that's coming in is what should be, and that there are not you know, potential compromises in what your children are accessing. So, you know, a couple of those apps, I know that there are many out there. NetNanny, Custodio are both options that offer a real-time activity notifications and app blocking. So additional ways to make sure that your children are safe. So just to expand on cybersecurity and what you should be mindful of in terms of keeping yourself safe and keeping your finances safe. Phishing is and probably will continue to be a very big topic in terms of cybersecurity. So you probably hear the word spam and phishing used frequently, and there's a slight difference. So spam is annoying. It is the volume of emails that come in that you know, maybe you'd classify as junk mail. Phishing are more like malicious attempts. So they're asking you to do something. They want you to click on a link, or maybe it could be something you know, to the effect of, oh, you need to approve a payment. Please click this link to get here. And they're not necessarily ones that you know, you are recognizing or that you are expecting. That's what they're looking to do, is just to get you to click the link. In just clicking the link, oftentimes that's going to give you some basic information and access, give the hacker access to that information about you. And so a rule of thumb is, if you get a request to click a link and it wasn't something that you were expecting, take a step back and definitely reach out to that person if you want to verify if that information is truly legitimate. So you get an email from your bank and it says, click here, we have additional information about your financial statement, or we need you to approve this payment. If it's not something that you recognize, if the email looks to be off, if the spelling might be slightly off, call your banker and verify, and that will be the best way for you to confirm that. It is just to verify with the source. It's really, I know it's hard because we're moving through our days really quickly, but it just takes that one click and you know, they'll have some of that information about you, and really the best way to mitigate is to verify with the sender. So in terms of traveling, there are physical considerations as well as technology considerations. So I know we talked a bit already about utilizing private Wi-Fi, making sure if you don't have private Wi-Fi, we typically recommend that you set up a hotspot on your phone and connect to the hotspot. That makes sure that again, your information is safe. You'll also want to make sure to keep your laptop in your carry-on and do not put it in your checked bag. That also, I mean, that would be also related to iPads, you know, any sort of notebooks or surfaces. Keeping that laptop on hand is the single and best way to ensure that that laptop information is considered safe. So it is very easy as that laptop moves through the traveling process. If you send it to your check bag, it just passes through a lot of different checkpoints. So whether it's lost or whether it ends up getting taken out of your checked luggage, the best and easiest way to mitigate is simply to take it in your carry-on. And lastly, this is actually really important and new kind of consideration for this year, is those USB ports that you see in the airports. You'll want to be very careful not to utilize the USB portion of your chargers and plug them into those ports. So the FBI actually released a statement this year that indicated that what they call it is juice jacking. So if you're plugging into a USB port with the USB end of your phone or computer, you know, whether you're intending to charge or just connecting, there's actually a way for them to place like a way to hack the information that you have on your phone and your computer. And of course, it's one of those things, you're traveling, your phone's low, you just want to plug in and charge up, but make sure to be utilizing your actual charge box and not the USB port. If you use a charge box, you're protected, but it's really with that USB connection that you could be providing information that you don't intend to. And lastly, you'll see it appear a few times. Definitely use that multi-factor authentication with your password. So, and what we mean by that is you've probably seen with a lot of your apps that you're being asked to provide a second form of identification. So not only what you know, which is like a password, but also what you have. So that could be a text message verification, authenticator app. It's very important for when you are when you have the opportunity to utilize that multi-factor authentication, that you're utilizing it at a minimum, and definitely utilizing the apps when you have the opportunity to do so. That's a way to keep it safe. If you do lose your phone, if someone tries to log into your bank app on your phone, if they do get past that initial password on your phone, and they try to get into your bank app, that multi-factor authentication, which requires 2 forms of approval, is going to add that added layer of protection. That, again, the more layers that you put in there, the safer that you will be, your finances will be, and all of your assets. So just being.
Kayla, we have a couple questions if we could maybe at this time, because I know we have time for questions, but could you talk to us a little bit about maybe a VPN on your, like is the VPN considered private? Is that something you recommend?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So VPNs can be a successful way to access information remotely. You'll actually, if you've ever used a VPN, it's basically a tunnel to get information from one source onto a separate source that you're working on remotely. In today's day and age, VPNs are safe, but they actually can be made safer with the use of MFA. So depending on whether you're working in a VPN for your business or privately, there are ways to set up MFA on a VPN, and that is absolutely, by and large, the safest way to make sure that that connection is going to be as safe as it could be. Now, in terms of setting up a VPN for yourself, it's probably something that you would want to evaluate with a technology professional if it's in your personal life, and depending on what information you're looking to access. But if you are working with private information, it's a great solution to accessing information remotely. They can be, there is a cost associated with setting up a VPN, depending on what the nature of it is that you're working with. There are also applications that you can use that have MFA built in that would allow you to have like a remote desktop scenario where you're working from home, need to access information on a computer. But definitely, if you're looking at this from a business standpoint, it would be something that you would need to work with your employer with, because that does touch their network and all of the things that go in the background for that. You just wanted to definitely raise that discussion with your internal contact for IT to see if that's something that would be offered.
Very good. And then I have another question, and this actually plays kind of into our keeping track of information. So let's say your spouse uses, it's a great question, your spouse uses LastPass, and how do you make sure that if that spouse would pass, that you would have access? How if they're keeping it in that format, because that's the most protected, is there a way that we can ensure that, can you have dual access to LastPass? I mean, those types of things.
Yeah, that's a great question. So some of the password managers do allow for a single account with multiple access. So for instance, if you have a shared email that you may use with a spouse or a family member, that could be a way to manage that. You can have separate accounts, and then this would perhaps be a great way to utilize that checklist in which you're keeping your passwords and information, where if your spouse, especially if they're working with their own personal business passwords that they would want to keep separate from a family account, having that information on the list would be the easiest way to access that information separately. So it depends on how you'd want to manage your passwords and the scope of, how many business passwords you may have to personal passwords. But you do have options, to have multiple access to a single password account, if you will.
Very good, very good. Thank you.
So we're going to put in as many layers as we can for security. But the reality is there is always the possibility that something could happen. It happens to the best of us. I know we've heard in the news, even like a Target was hacked at Christmas, though, corporations with huge security settings in place. Unfortunately, there are many ways to be susceptible. So if you think you've been hacked, this is kind of a step-by-step on now which action should you be taking. So first, step back, take a deep breath. There are steps in place and ways to mitigate if something does happen. So you'll want to take the action depending on where you've been hacked to change your password immediately. So if you think that it was your bank account or perhaps your email, you'll want to go ahead and go in and make sure that you change that password as soon as you believe that you've been hacked. I would not even wait for confirmation. If you think there's the possibility, go ahead and change it. One thing you'll also want to consider, it's not best practice to have passwords that are really similar, but we know that, in the day-to-day, it's easy to make variations on the same password, but you'll definitely want to be mindful that if you think that you've been hacked, that you also change the passwords to those accounts that have similar passwords, because once they gain access to one account, inevitably there's a possibility that they may try to access the other. So just keeping that in mind. You'll also want to secure any login processes that you currently have. So for instance, if you did not have multi-factor set up, you're going to want to go ahead and add that process in. It's to mitigate any immediate additional attempts at compromising your information. Next is checking your account activity, especially as it pertains to any sort of financial accounts that you may have. So checking for unusual transaction activity. And then also for social media, if you are, if you have any unusual posts or messages, people are messaging you saying, I got this weird message from you. Those are the things that you're going to want to look out for to see where you may have been compromised. Resetting your devices is compromised. So for instance, if you lose your phone, you're going to want to go ahead and do either a lockout or a factory reset of your phone so that there's no information. Most phones have that capability. Most business computers may have that capability, depending on what security software that you have on there to wipe the information from that. That kind of leads to a point to consider. You'll want to make sure to be backing up your information, as you are working on your computer or your phone. Regular backups will make sure that you can recover some of that information if you do have to do a factory reset. The big one, of course, is contacting the resources who can assist. If you've been hacked, you're certainly not alone, and there will be other professionals and people for the various accounts that you work with who'll be able to assist quickly, and you'll want to rely on the experts that you have in your life to help assist with making sure that any additional action is taken. So in the example, you think that your bank account's been compromised, contact your banker, contact your accountant, let them know. That way, on the back end, they can be working on any other action that they can take to help ensure that you and your accounts are protected. And then taking preventative measures for the future. We talked a lot about a lot of things that you can do to keep your accounts and your information safe, and just taking this as an opportunity to say, now you know what it's like to have the experience of having been hacked, and then you can take those preventative measures and add them to your daily routine. I think the most important thing is making a habit out of what you can. That way it becomes second nature, and then you'll find that you're in a better security posture than before. So again, we're all susceptible to the potential of being hacked, and definitely something to consider is that technology is changing. So just keeping up to date and being in contact with your IT professionals as well, if you have them, on what measures you can take going forward.
Real quick, one of our attendees, and it's a great point to make, and we probably take it for granted because we've had it beat into our heads by our technology team, but when we were talking about cybersecurity, and you do get somebody phishing, don't use the contact number in the email. Go back to your original communication with that representative. Don't use the number provided when you're trying to verify if they're authentic or not from that perspective. And great point. So thank you very much for pointing that out so we could share that. So.
Right, thanks, Kayla, for the great information. In summary, and I think, these points we have on this slide are applicable to all three of the sessions that we've done. We've given a lot of information, and it can be a lot to digest, or can be maybe overwhelming to think about how you can get started in this process. So just in summary, your takeaways: be involved and just start to familiarize yourself with your financial picture, your accounts, and all of the personal representatives or, contacts, resources that can help you in this process. Be aware of any online or physical security threats. Just be mindful of what you're putting out there, as Kayla mentioned. And then identify areas of further education. So if there's something that maybe we mentioned today that it has piqued your interest, or maybe you're not as familiar with, start to research maybe how you can further educate yourself, or find resources that can help you in those areas. And then just use your resources in general. I think we mentioned a lot of them: your bankers, your investment advisors, your accountants, family members or people that you trust. Use your resources to help with this process. You definitely don't have to go at it alone. There's a lot of people that can help and facilitate. Any further questions? Feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get them answered with our last couple of minutes here.
We currently have one question. Is exposure to your bank routing number something that we have to be aware of, or have we seen anything happen with that in today's world?
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it goes back to Kayla's point of just being cognizant of what information you're putting out there and how you're putting it out there. With a software like Bill.com, I think that actually adds a layer of security, because it's those websites are very secure. They've taken a lot of measures to make sure that the information you're putting out there is protected. And kind of how we talked about, it adds a layer of protection by using one of those softwares. It kind of adds a layer of security to your personal account, because nothing's going out on a check with your personal, routing and account number on it. It's kind of a Bill.com type account that they're utilizing. And there's several different softwares that have a very similar setup.
Where we've seen it maybe where it's hacked somebody or somebody's done it is in today's day and world, they can make a bogus check and use your routing number and your account number and present it for payment. So that's where we've seen people's personal checking information be used in inappropriate manners. Yeah. From that perspective.
And I think any more, physical checks are probably not as common, which is, kind of probably an added layer of security in and of itself. There's lots of ways to do electronic payment, or ACH, which is probably, a lot more secure, because a lot of times you're setting it up with the vendor that you're paying. And those websites are secure and have multi-factor authentication most of the time. So that's, if you have the option to do that type of payment, it's probably a good way to go.
Or credit card payment. I know a lot of people are
Yeah.
changing just if it's available to pay by credit card, and then you get points for that too. So, you know, I know a lot of people are paying as much now as possible with credit card too, instead of cash or check.
Another question, how will we get CPE credits? Reagan, I'll let you. take
Yep, yep, if you need CPE credits, please let me know. My email was back a couple slides here. I can put it back up. If you need one, if you want to send me a message, I can send you a CPE certificate of attendance.
I think after today's email, or after today's presentation, so when you log on to the Zoom, there will be a short survey. So feel free to fill out that survey. Please provide your thoughts if there's topics that, you know, you'd like us to cover in future sessions. We are planning to continue this series, so provide your thoughts there. And then there will also be a follow-up email coming out with the slides for today's presentation, the recording, and then a link for the survey. And so you can always reply to Reagan's email there if you're needing CPE, and she can get it to you that way.
Kayla, do you want to maybe address that last question? We do have one more question we'll take as we wrap up this afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of suggestions on using a password manager, a lot of the major password managers like LastPass, 1Password are both really popular. I would suggest, as you're looking at what options work best for you, the reason we typically suggest those is because they do have that phone app, so it makes the management of your passwords easier. You'll also want to consider the number of the number of passwords and the number of users that you'll have, because each of the password managers have a little bit of a different approach to the number of passwords where they're saved and the number of users that you can have, whether they're joint accounts or not. Depending on your situation, one may be better than another, but LastPass and 1Password seem to be really good fits for you know, a larger population of people, so that's typically what we would suggest.
Thank you, everyone, for attending today. Look for the survey and the follow-up emails, and anytime, feel free to reach out with follow-up questions. We're happy to answer questions or help in any way.
Thank you.